In the last two videos, we dealt with an important topic, which was about the feast days, the appointed times of Yahuwah. That was a highly important topic and one that needed to be covered. I am happy that many of you were blessed by it, and I hope that it helps you remember Yahuwah more and helps you become more aligned to him. Let me tell you, I did not come to that understanding on my own. I sincerely prayed to Yah for understanding of his Torah and his ways and his appointed times, so that I can honor him properly and teach others to do so as well. That video was an answer to my prayers. It is a confirmation of John chapter 14, and whatever you ask in my name, that I will do, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If you ask anything in my name, I will do it. John chapter 14, verses 13 and 14. I tell you that if you talk to Yahuwah and ask him for clarity, wisdom, and understanding, what you ask of him, he will provide. And no, not that prosperity gospel type of asking, people using him to get rich. No. As James tells us, you ask and do not receive because you ask amiss, that you may spend it on your pleasures. James chapter 4, verse 3. Understand, if you desire to serve him better and understand him more, as you seek him, he will come closer to you. I only speak from experience, and this ministry is a testimony of that experience. Now, in this series about the Torah, we first started with understanding his commandments. Then we went into understanding Yahuwah and how we must regard him. And then, again, over the last two videos, we went over his appointed times. We have been gaining a deeper understanding of his Torah and what he desires for us, and how we are to remember him and honor him. As we go over all this, I hope you can see how wicked it has been for people, especially these pastors and church leaders who keep us away from his Torah when it provides all the clarity that we need. Because of the Holy Spirit inside of us, as you begin to understand his Torah, you should be feeling more peace and warmth. There should be feelings of joy, probably unexplainable joy, because the Ruach is being filled and you are being brought back into remembrance of him with understanding according to his word and not from the world. Now, I do have other subjects that need to be discussed, but Yahuwah has told me to continue on more with discussing his Torah. We are to grow more in understanding of him, and I don't care who doesn't want to hear these messages, or even if a small few only tune in. We must continue to grow in knowledge and understanding of him, because we are preparing for him. We are preparing for his kingdom, and we know it is not going to be some massive following of this that occurs with it. I don't want these videos to go viral. I mean, it would be nice if they did, because that means that people really cared about him. That's far from my expectations. I want these videos to go to people who love Yah, and those who don't can ignore them. So I want to continue on with discussing his Torah. We must continue to understand how he led Israel. And so the next topics we must discuss are his laws for Israel. So we will first start with his dietary laws. This topic has been met with much strife and confusion. And today, the record will be set straight, because this is a wonderful topic to understand. We will learn about Yahuwah's dietary laws. Let's begin. Okay, so this topic is a topic that needs to be discussed because this is one reason for many other problems that we have as a whole. All day long in the Christian church, we hear Christians say that Jesus is their physician. But also as Christians, which is supposed to mean followers of Christ, they choose not to follow his ways or his examples. And like many other topics, with this topic there are misuses of scripture and then rebellion against the Torah. All these things we must not accept. One thing that most people in Christianity do is they disregard Yahuwah's dietary laws. This is especially done in America. Being that I just finished a series on Luther, it's important to know that Luther himself and his family are said to have eaten a tremendous amount of pork in their diet. It is said that pork was a part of the diet of those people during that time. The Gentiles in Europe ate pork and many other unclean foods, and as they claimed to be followers of Christ, they rejected these rules that Yahuwah had for his children about the foods they were supposed to eat. For Negroes, the people that descend from the people that were taken in slavery and were forced to eat what the slave owners gave them, and then were retaught by these same European Christians who the God of Israel was and was about, we came to learn about Yahuwah in another way that has said that this is not about what we eat that defiles us, but what comes out of us that defiles us. And that scripture is true, of course, but it is also not in context of the dietary laws. We're going to get there, so let's not jump. In our modern culture, we are taught that we can eat and consume whatever it is that we want. But then, at the same time as we consume these things, we have all these health issues that we complain about, and we ignore why these things are happening with us. Not keeping the dietary laws are a big reason for the problems that people seem to just not recognize. So we need to understand this topic about the dietary laws. As we review this topic, let's start from a proper understanding because it really is about how you view this that makes all the difference. When people review the dietary laws, they hear it as restrictions. And people in rebellion, they don't like to hear about restrictions and hear that our Father has said that you can't do something. They don't like hearing it like that. So it's important to understand your mindset. Let's refocus and understand. Please change your perspective. When you understand Yahuwah and His Torah, understand that His Torah was not about placing laws and restrictions on Israel that was about hindering them. No, that is not the case. He wanted the best for them. He wanted them to grow strong and healthy and capable. He is our Creator, and therefore, He is who we would want to learn more from and understand what is good for us and what is bad for us. There's never been anything that He restricted us from that was actually good for us. I want you to think of it like this. When a creator of a new technology or a new drug speaks out and gives warnings, it all gives us cause for concern. Like when Elon Musk started warning about AI. Even though he wasn't the creator of it, being that he was a leader in the industry, it gave many cause for concern. When people started warning about certain drugs they created and gave warnings and gave us cause for concern. But for some reason, our creator, Yahuwah, the one who those worship Him as creator, they can't see that Yahuwah has given us warnings on things and has given His people laws not to restrict them, but to protect them. Let me ask you, when raising your child, do you really need to explain to your child why they should not touch a hot stove or any other rules that you give them to protect them? I mean, yes, it's always good for them to understand, but do you always have to teach them why in order for them to comply? Or should they just listen because they respect you and they honor you? Well, for us, with our relationship with Yahuwah, it should be that we listen to these rules and we honor them because we honor and respect Yahuwah. But today, it is not that simple because we have grown up in a culture that has taught us to reject Yah's laws, that He doesn't really care if we follow them or not, and that we can do whatever we want because we have Jesus. That's the doctrine in mainstream Christianity. So when you come across videos like this and they're about keeping the laws, people instantly hit that reject button because they want to do what they want to do. So now in these times, instead of me making a video that clearly says, follow Yahuwah's laws because you trust Him, you love Him, and you want to let Him lead your life, I now have to make a video explaining why He has made these laws so you can understand more on why you should follow Him. And this is not a dig at anyone, don't get me wrong with this. It's just a testament of the times that we're in. I hope that after this is discussed, it brings more people into a mindset of trusting Yahuwah more and understanding that His law is not a burden or just a bunch of restrictions. He has many things to say because He has created us and everything else in this world. And so if we read His law and follow it, it helps us live a more fulfilled life while also staying out of trouble and out of danger. So let's discuss His dietary laws and what He has proclaimed so that we can understand Him better and we can help ourselves more. Okay, to really break this down, what I will do is first read the laws so we can understand first what the dietary laws are. We will start with clean versus unclean. You shall therefore distinguish between clean animals and unclean, between unclean birds and clean. And you shall not make yourselves abominable by beast or by bird, or by any kind of living thing that creeps on the ground, which I have separated from you as unclean. And you shall be holy to me, for I Yahuwah am holy, and have separated you from the peoples, that you should be mine. That's Leviticus chapter 20, verses 25 through 26. So very clearly, He has commanded Israel that they should eat what He has deemed clean, and they should not eat what He has deemed unclean. He told us that we must distinguish between animals, whether they are clean or unclean. We must do this. That's a mindset. So when you're looking at an animal, you must say, is that clean or is that unclean? Okay, so after you understand clean versus unclean, then you must understand that he has separated it by creatures. We will deal with animals like cattle first. We'll talk about the clean animals first. Now Yahuwah spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying to them, "Speak to the children of Israel, saying, These are the animals which you may eat among all the animals that are on the earth. Among the animals, whatever divides the hoof, having cloven hooves and chewing the cud, that you may eat." That's Leviticus chapter 11, verses 1 through 3. Also, you shall not eat any detestable thing. These are the animals which you may eat: the ox, the sheep, the goat, the deer, the gazelle, the roe deer, the wild goat, the mountain goat, the antelope, and the mountain sheep. And you may eat every animal with cloven hooves, having the hoof split into 2 parts, and that chews the cud among the animals. Deuteronomy chapter 14, verses 3 through 6. He said we can eat of those animals, any animal with the cloven hoof. This is what a cloven hoof is. It is the divided hoof or foot of animals such as cattle, sheep, goats, and deer. Let's focus on what the clean animals eat. They chew the cud. What is the cud? Cud is partly digested food returned from the stomach of ruminants to the mouth for further chewing. I know it sounds disgusting, but we don't eat it. These animals do. But why is this good? You see, when chewing the cud, it helps sort the digesta, that's the material being digested, and absorbs the nutrients. By them taking time to rechew their food later, cows avoid the need to chew well when they eat. You see, Yah has made them this way. The way they eat helps them digest better and absorb more nutrients. Also notice, when you see these animals, what do you see them eating? Grass. Yeah, that's why the best beef you can buy is organic, grass-fed beef. But we'll get back to that. That's the clean animals. Let's deal with the unclean. Nevertheless, these you shall not eat among those that chew the cud, or those that have cloven hooves. The camel, because it chews the cud, but does not have cloven hooves, is unclean to you. The rock hyrax, because it chews the cud, but does not have cloven hooves, is unclean to you. The hare, because it chews the cud, but does not have cloven hooves, is unclean to you. And the swine, though it divides the hoof, having cloven hooves, yet does not chew the cud, is unclean to you. Their flesh you shall not eat, and their carcasses you shall not touch. They are unclean to you. That's Leviticus chapter 11, verses 4 through 8. You see, he provides more understanding of what is considered unclean, because just because an animal chews the cud does not make it clean. Camels and rabbits are unclean, because even though they chew the cud, they don't have cloven hooves. Swine does have cloven hooves, but they don't chew the cud, so they're unclean. They don't digest the food the same way. Now, those are the clean animals. He has rules about fish as well, the food in the sea. In regards to clean fish, this is what he has said. These you may eat of all that are in the water. Whatever in the water has fins and scales, whether in the seas or in the rivers, that you may eat. Leviticus chapter 11, verse 9. It's simple, really. Your fish must have both fin and scales. So like this snapper, which is delicious by the way, this is clean. This catfish is not clean because it does not have scales. Let's actually read about the unclean fish. But all in the seas or in the rivers that do not have fins and scales, all that move in the water or any living thing which is in the water, they are an abomination to you. They shall be an abomination to you. You shall not eat their flesh, but you shall regard their carcasses as an abomination. Whatever in the water does not have fins or scales, that shall be an abomination to you. Leviticus chapter 11, verses 10 through 12. All things in the water that do not have fin or scales are unclean. All things in the water. So you really need to know about the fish and the sea creatures that you're eating. All the shellfish were not created to be eaten. They are to be looked at as an abomination. I will come back to that though. Let's keep going. Let's look at birds. This is what he has commanded about clean birds. You may eat all clean birds. Deuteronomy chapter 14, verse 20. Okay, well, that's not specific, but you get more clarity when you read about the birds that are unclean. And these you shall regard as an abomination among the birds. They shall not be eaten. They are an abomination. The eagle, the vulture, the buzzard, the kite, and the falcon after its kind, every raven after its kind, the ostrich, the short-eared owl, the seagull, and the hawk after its kind, the little owl, the fisher owl, and the screech owl, the white owl, the jackdaw, and the carrion vulture, the stork, the heron after its kind, the hoopoe, and the bat. Leviticus chapter 11, verses 13 through 19. Okay, so he made it simple. He listed the birds that should not be eaten. So we know clearly what we should avoid. Let's keep going. Clean insects. Yet these you may eat of every flying insect that creeps on all fours, those which have jointed legs above their feet with which to leap on the earth. These you may eat, the locust after its kind, the destroying locust after its kind, the cricket after its kind, and the grasshopper after its kind. That's Leviticus chapter 11, verses 21 through 22. Now listen, I have never eaten any of these yet, but I do know people who have eaten chocolate-covered grasshoppers. I am not telling you to eat them. I am just saying that they're clean to eat. In reference to what is unclean in regards to insects, he says, all flying insects that creep on all fours shall be an abomination to you. Leviticus chapter 11, verse 20. He has also said this in reference to all creeping creatures being unclean. These also shall be unclean to you among the creeping things that creep on the earth: the mole, the mouse, and the large lizard after its kind, the gecko, the monitor lizard, the sand reptile, the sand lizard, and the chameleon. These are unclean to you among all that creep. Whoever touches them when they are dead shall be unclean until evening. And every creeping thing that creeps on the earth shall be an abomination. It shall not be eaten. Whatever crawls on its belly, whatever goes on all fours, whatever has many feet among all creeping things that creep on the earth, these you shall not eat, for they are an abomination. You shall not make yourselves abominable with any creeping thing that creeps, nor shall you make yourselves unclean with them, lest you be defiled by them. That's Leviticus chapter 11, verses 29 through 31, and verses 41 through 43. And so, he has made that very clear about what is made for our consumption and what has not been made. So, here's the deal though. You know, most of these things that are unclean, people actually don't have a problem with abstaining from the most part. I mean, I know a few people that actually want to eat an alligator, but I don't get it. And that's not the majority. For the most part, all these animals we don't eat or we wouldn't eat. The problem really occurs when we're dealing with the foods that the Gentile nations have been devouring and have made it something that is harmless. They've been feeding us with pork belly that we consume as bacon, shrimp, lobster, and crabs. I remember a few years living in Baltimore, and that's all we eat is crabs. And they would tell us as we eating them that yellow stuff is the poop. And we'll just say, oh, ew, and just wipe it off. Or some eat it and say, oh, it's the best part. It's all unclean. You see, we don't even think about this. All these things we have been shown to be eaten as okay by the church. And so we have just adapted to the ways of lawless individuals, and we adjusted our ways to them. But if we take a step back and just understand these animals, the clean animals versus the unclean, you could really understand more about Yahuwah and his Torah. The clean animals, they chew the cud. The way they eat, they are made to digest more nutrients. But swine does not. You must remember that what you eat does not just feed you to satisfy hunger. They also fuel and fix your body. Certain foods contain nutrients that make you more healthy and live stronger. When you eat those clean animals, you're eating food that is healthy. And now you're digesting nutrients Yahuwah has planted in the earth. You know why they say it's great to juice a vegetable? Because you get more of the nutrients. It's like with the animals that chew the cud. They are getting more nutrients, and their nutrients go into you when you eat them. Animals like swine, pork, they eat waste. Swine eat their own droppings. They eat slop. They do not eat in a way that provides our body with nutrients that we need. It actually harms our body. This type of food actually harms our body. Pork in your diet can cause major health issues. And as a disclaimer for YouTube, I am not a physician. You should discuss all this with a doctor. Okay. Now, in regards to the food from the sea, anything with fins and scales. And if you ever go fishing, it's endless with that. But what do they love feeding us here in America? We love some fried catfish. Of all these fish, why is this what we were given? And on top of that, shellfish is something that is eaten in masses today. People argue all day long about the dietary laws because they don't want to give up the bacon, the shrimp, the snow crabs, the lobster. But look at these creatures. We already spoke about swine eating their own waste. But what about shellfish? These are bottom feeders. They walk on the ocean or the seafloor eating waste, eating the poop of the other sea creatures.
The first time I saw it, I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was like the fauna was completely different than anything I'd seen before. When you get 8 or 10 species all in a small pool still coexisting, and they're all shrimp or crabs, it's like, well, how do they do that? How do they split up the resources? How do they share things? And so they all have their job. Feeding, they're filter feeding, they're taking particles out of the water, they're picking on all of the things that they can feed on. The kinds of places where the shrimp like to be are exactly the same places where the people like to be. The reason that they like the same places that our shrimp do is the shrimp are keeping it clean. And they're sweeping off the sediment from the bottom. They're turning a lot of that material into their own bodies, and that the shrimp are able to use a lot of things that would otherwise pile up and be kind of slimy and not very attractive to swimmers. And so all that sweeping and all that movement that they do is really keeping things great for recreation.
They are the garbage cans of the water. Think about a Roomba or any vacuum cleaner that just goes around cleaning up the waste that is in your floors. Imagine you then eating the vacuum because it's now edible. You are now eating and consuming all the waste that these things sucked up. When we eat shellfish and pork, this is exactly what we're doing, and therefore our bodies are being filled with these things that are bad for us, instead of what is good for us. You see, we reject his laws and then wonder why we are unhealthy and we have all these health issues. Some may say, oh, I have high cholesterol, and they go to the doctor to ask questions. And a good doctor might ask about the foods that they eat and instantly ask, well, do you eat a lot of shrimp? I just say this because this happened with a family member of mine. She suffered from high cholesterol, and the doctor assumed that she ate a lot of shrimp because of how the shrimp affects the body. Again, I'm not a doctor, I'm just speaking about what I heard. Understand, we reject his laws and do what we want, and then we wonder why we have issues. And this is all around the board. Our Father gave us laws so that we can live a fruitful life in abundance. Understand, he isn't putting restrictions in front of us to hinder our life, but to make it better. If you stopped only looking at the Torah in a way of restrictions that you can't keep, but understand that our Father loves us and has given us guidelines of living that keeps us safe, healthy, and fruitful, you wouldn't run from his Torah, but you run towards it. You see, I don't keep the dietary laws for salvation. I don't understand why people talk like that. I keep the dietary laws because I want to be healthy. Why would I challenge and go against the commandments that our Creator has given us? He is our Creator. He created us. He created all these creatures. That's why we worship him. He knows what they eat and how they would affect our bodies. He created our bodies. Why would I ignore his guidance on what is good for my body while I know he is who created me? It makes no sense. You say he's your creator. He's the one guiding your diet, but then you want to say you reject his ways because you don't have to keep it? That's dumb. Anyways, and I'm not calling you dumb, I'm calling the mindset dumb. Sometimes I get a little passionate. Obviously, most people don't look at it this way, and they use this counter in Christianity. The counter argument of keeping the dietary laws is always about what Yahusha said. They use the fact that Yahusha said is not what goes into the body that defiles us, but what comes out of it. I used this too when I didn't really understand. Let's deal with it. Then the scribes and Pharisees who were from Jerusalem came to Yahusha saying, "Why do your disciples transgress the tradition of the elders? For they do not wash their hands when they eat bread." He answered and said to them, "Why do you also transgress the commandment of Elohim because of your tradition? For Elohim commanded, saying, 'Honor your father and your mother,' and he who curses father or mother, let him be put to death. But you say, whoever says to his father or mother, 'Whatever profit you might have received from me is a gift to Elohim,' then he need not honor his father or mother? Thus you have made the commandment of Elohim of no effect by your tradition. Hypocrites! Well did Isaiah prophesy about you, saying, These people draw near to me with their mouth, and honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. And in vain they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. When he had called the multitude to himself, he said to them, Hear and understand. Not what goes into the mouth defiles a man, but what comes out of the mouth, this defiles a man. Then his disciples came and said to him, Do you know that the Pharisees were offended when they heard this saying? But he answered and said, Every plant which my heavenly Father has not planted will be uprooted. Let them alone. They are blind leaders of the blind. And if the blind leads the blind, both will fall into a ditch. Then Peter answered and said to him, Explain this parable to us. So Yahusha said, Are you also still without understanding? Do you not yet understand that whatever enters the mouth goes into the stomach and is eliminated? But those things which proceed out of the mouth come from the heart, and they defile a man. For out of the heart proceed evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness, blasphemies. These are the things which defile a man. But to eat with unwashed hands does not defile a man. Matthew chapter 15, verses 1 through 20. And so let's deal with this plain and simple. In these scriptures, they are not talking about eating pork or unclean animals. You see, if Yahusha and his disciples ate unclean food, this would have been a big deal. This was about a tradition that the elders of Judah made about washing their hands before they ate bread. The Pharisees were asking Yahusha why his disciples didn't keep that tradition. It was not about keeping the Torah. It was about keeping a tradition of men. And Yahusha explained that following traditions of men make the word of Elohim of no effect. And he used another tradition that they kept that showed the hypocrisy from it, about not honoring your mother and your father. Through this, he explained that it's not what goes into a man that defiles them, but what comes out of them. So just because they ate with unwashed hands does not mean they are defiled. Now, somehow, this has been taken to mean that the whole dietary laws from Yahuwah are now to be disregarded, and that is so far from the case. The disciples didn't start eating unclean animals because they were with Messiah. If you don't recognize this, let's go back to the book of Acts and review Peter's vision. The next day, as they went on their journey and drew near the city, Peter went up on the housetop to pray, about the 6th hour. Then he became very hungry and wanted to eat. But while they made ready, he fell into a trance and saw heaven opened and an object like a great sheet bound at the 4 corners, descending to him and let down to the earth. In it were all the kinds of 4-footed animals of the earth, wild beasts, creeping things, and birds of the air. And a voice came to him, Rise, Peter, kill and eat. But Peter said, Not so, Adonai, for I have never eaten anything common or unclean. And a voice spoke to him again the second time, What Elohim has cleansed, you must not call common. This was done 3 times, and the object was taken up into heaven again. That's Acts chapter 10, verses 9 through 16. You see, this vision was about salvation coming to the Gentiles. But in this vision, I bring it up because Peter saw all kinds of unclean animals, and Yahusha said to him to kill and eat it. But Peter said no, because he has never eaten anything common or unclean. This was their culture, and it did not change. If it had changed when Messiah was there, he would not have said no, because he would have already been eating unclean food when Messiah was with him. But he clearly did not. It's important that you understand when the change happened. The diet changed when Gentiles took the authority of Christianity and they began to tell their followers that they can compromise on certain things. Now listen, be clear, I don't take this as a salvation issue. Am I saying that you will not be saved if you eat bacon? No, I'm not saying that. I am not a judge, and I'm not here to make calls like that. I must say, though, that I do think that those that have a problem with this also have a problem with his laws in general. And therefore, there's an overall question of love and obedience that comes into play. And that's where the real problems lie. But that's not my call to make. I'm just teaching about what he has said in his word. You pray about it to yourself. Now, there are more dietary laws, and I'm not going to ignore them. Let's read. Do not eat blood. Whatever man of the house of Israel or of the strangers who dwell among you, who eats any blood, I will set my face against that person who eats blood, and will cut him off from among his people. For the life of the flesh is in the blood, that I have given to you upon the altar to make atonement for your souls. For it is the blood that makes atonement for the soul. Therefore I said to the children of Israel, no one among you shall eat blood, nor shall any strangers who dwell among you eat blood. Whatever man of the children of Israel or of the strangers who dwell among you, who hunts and catches any animal or bird that may be eaten, he shall pour out his blood and cover it with dust. For it is the life of all flesh. Its blood sustains its life. Therefore I said to the children of Israel, you shall not eat the blood of any flesh, for the life of all flesh is its blood. Whoever eats it shall be cut off. Leviticus chapter 17, verses 10 through 14. Do not eat the fat. And Yahuwah spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel, saying, you shall not eat any fat of ox or sheep or goat, and the fat of an animal that dies naturally, and the fat of what is torn by wild beasts, may be used in any other way, but you shall by no means eat it. For whoever eats the fat of the animal of which men offer an offering made by fire to Yahuwah, the person who eats it shall be cut off from his people. Leviticus chapter 7, verses 22 to 25. Next, do not eat what has died of itself. You shall not eat anything that dies of itself. You may give it to the alien who is within your gates, that he may eat it, or you may sell it to a foreigner, for you are a holy people to Yahuwah, your Elohim. You shall not boil a young goat in its mother's milk. Deuteronomy chapter 14, verse 21. Laws about a mother and his young. You shall not boil a young goat in its mother's milk. Exodus chapter 23, verse 19. Law about a bird when it's young. If its bird's nest happens to be before you along the way, in any tree or on the ground, with young ones or eggs, with the mother sitting on the young or on the eggs, you shall not take the mother with the young. You shall let the mother go and take the young for yourself, that it may be well with you and that you may prolong your days. Deuteronomy chapter 22, verses 6 and 7. See, this was the way Yahuwah guided Israel. And if you learn to look at his laws, coming from a father who loves us and wants the best for us, instead of looking at him in a way of being an overprotective father that simply wants to control your life, if you learn to look at him in the right way, you will not only live in a life more aligned to him and his will, but you will also be blessed in all areas of your life. I say this personally. When I got rid of my lawless diet and stopped eating that pork and that shellfish, I became more healthy. My body became better. I lost weight. My body became better. Our foods are a major reason for our health problems, and the ones with the biggest health issues normally are the ones that eat lawlessly. You should not be looking at the dietary laws in terms of salvation. You should look at the dietary laws in terms of how you maintain Yah's temple, which is your body. If you are a believer and dwell with his Ruach, you should want to maintain that body with the nutrients of the earth that is well-pleasing to our body, created by our Creator. Heed his instructions and his commands, and you will see the benefits. Most of us are like a rebellious teenager who says we love our parents, but we don't want to live under the rules, not realizing they had these rules so we can live happy and fruitful and avoid unwanted problems. Many of us need to deal with the fact that we have learned about Yahuwah from people who either did not truly know him or who truly hated him, and therefore you were taught about his laws and commands in a very false way. You are holding onto falsehoods put in front of you by Satan in order to distract and deter you from our Father. His dietary laws are for our own good, and if you trust him and let him guide your life, you will begin to understand why he has said so many things. He does not want to control you. He wants to bless you. If you learn to listen to him and love him back, it will lead to a wonderful, fruitful relationship that you will only see blessings from in the end. Follow him and obey him, and be blessed. Hallelujah. Praise Yah. Okay, thanks again for watching. If this has blessed you, please make sure to like it and share this video with others. If you haven't done so already, please make sure you subscribe to this channel. Yah willing, I upload every Friday. Also, please don't forget to follow this ministry on Facebook and Instagram, as well as on this website, truthunedited.com. Please continue to pray for this ministry. Your prayers and support are sincerely appreciated. Thank you. And as always, I'd like to thank those who have donated to this ministry. Your contribution to the ministry is a blessing and helps continue on with this assignment. Your support is a blessing, and I'm always humbled by it. I'm very thankful for you. Be blessed. Okay. Thanks again, everyone, for watching. I love you all.